All right, good morning, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. On behalf of Smart Dolphins, I would like to welcome you to today's Microsoft Teams meetings, What's New training event. Before we get started, I'd like to just remind folks of a couple of upcoming training events we're doing this summer. So you can visit our website to register. But on July 25th at 11 a.m., we are doing a Microsoft Copilot with Excel and Outlook. And then stay tuned for details on our website for Microsoft Forms, Microsoft Planner, and a Cybersecurity Fundamentals event, all coming up in August. Today's topic is Microsoft Teams meeting, so open up your Microsoft Teams and your Outlook to follow along if you like. And we're also going to have a handout in the chat, which you can download and follow along with as well. All right, I'd now like to introduce our trainer for today. It is a great pleasure to welcome Jolyn Reen. Jolyn stands out as a Microsoft Master Instructor, having over 30 years of experience. Thank you for joining us today, Jolyn. Please take it away.
Thank you, Haley, and welcome everybody to our session today on using Microsoft Teams, specifically the meetings portion. There's been a lot of changes that have been happening to the application Microsoft Teams, but today we want to focus really on the meeting side. And when it comes to using Microsoft Teams meetings, of course, are a way that we can get together online through a virtual connection, like we are doing here in Zoom today. But with Microsoft Teams, we have a lot of extra connectivity that we have with other applications as well. And you're going to see a little bit of that here today as we go through these different options that we have. So on a regular basis, Microsoft Teams, of course, is being updated, or sometimes it's a brand new feature, but most of the time it's just going to be an enhancement to existing features. And I want to start by talking about the user interface. There's been some enhancements to this recently that I wanted to make sure everybody understood. One of them is actually the navigation pane on the left, so that menu bar, otherwise known as the navigation pane on the left-hand side, has a new app that can be added in. So if you would go to the dot, 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 where it talks about view more apps, there's an app called Meet. So I'm just going to search for it by typing an M, and then I'm going to click on the icon for Meet. This is something that I keep pinned on the left-hand side because I use it so often. So I'm going to go to the icon on the left-hand side. I'm going to right click and I'm going to left click on pin. So it stays there. So anytime I need to come back to it, I just click on the icon. But what exactly is this feature? It's going to show you any of your upcoming events going across the top. I shouldn't say events, any meetings or anything like that that you have coming up. So it's directly linked to your Teams calendar and your Outlook calendar. So when it sees that you have a meeting coming up, it automatically summarizes all of that here in this place called Meet. At the top, you're going to see that this is what I have coming up yet today. And you can see where it's even telling me that there's conflicts. So this meeting that I'm in right now, of course, is on there. And it's telling me that there is a conflict with Project Discovery meeting. But under my Project Discovery, you can see that it's conflicting with the meeting that I'm in here for the Teams meetings. So I like that it shows you that right away and it shows up in red. So great feature, but it also gives you access to joining the meeting directly from here as well. So if I'm kind of out here looking at what do I have coming up, this is where I will go to kind of see what's going on, because this is a great at a glance look. It's like a dashboard. And if I need to join a meeting, I can click join. So this meeting is supposed to be going on right now. I can click join, or notice that I also have this running late. So if I'm going to be joining the meeting, but I'm running a little late, I can click on running late, and you can see it automatically comes up with a chat window. And so I'm just going to say I'm running late. I will be there in 5 minutes. And I'm just going to send that to the team so that they know that I'll be joining the meeting in a couple of minutes. So I really like the interaction that we get. I can see what's coming up. I can join something that's going on right now. Even if let's say that I didn't even accept the meeting. I got the meeting request, I didn't accept it, I'm still going to see it and I'll still be able to access everything. Down below though, so that's kind of the top section. Down below, you can see all recent meetings. So we can see that we have all these meetings that were going on. And what's great about this is I can see that yesterday I had this meeting that was streaming your workflow. On the right-hand side, I see view recap. We're going to talk a lot about recaps today because this is a somewhat new and already been enhanced feature that we want to make sure we understand. But I'm going to click on view recap right from this Meet application. What it's going to do is automatically open the meeting that it was related to. So I can then, and you can see at the top right, it's taking a second for it to open, but at the top right, if this was a meeting that was going to be going on, I could automatically click join to actually join that meeting, which is pretty great that we can do that. Okay. So for some reason, it's taking a second for it to come up, but let me kind of click on a couple of icons here. And one thing that I want to point out is I came to this recap for this meeting, and it's actually letting me know that I can't view recaps. So this is something that's important to understand. Only org members have access to the meeting recap. So what this is beneficial for is the fact that if I create a meeting and I invite a bunch of people from my company, they're part of my domain, they will be able to come back and recap the meeting. But if they're from outside of your domain, they can't come back and recap. So I'll show you what the recap actually does in a meeting that I did so that you can have a better understanding as to how you might use that. But I think it's a security good feature to not allow people that are outside of your organization to come into the recap. But where this actually took me, so I was in the app called Meet. I clicked on recap for a previous meeting that I had, and it automatically took me to the calendar. So right now I'm in the Teams calendar. Just so you notice on the left-hand side, you can see that I'm selected on calendar. So that's what it's going to do automatically for you. Okay. Now, when it comes to other changes that I want you to be aware of on the navigation pane on the left-hand side, if you go to activity, activity is going to show you updates to your calendar. So this is a notification area, and you can actually see that I'm clicked on this one that is student one invited you. So I have this meeting that I was invited to that I haven't even responded to yet, but I can see all the details right here. And at the top of the right-hand side of the screen, where it says RSVP, I can click on that and I can actually accept, tentative, or decline. I don't have to go to Outlook to do that. So if I'm already here in Teams working on something else and I notice I have a notification come up on my activity, I can go straight to that notification without having to go back to Outlook to find these. I love this new feature. We didn't used to get these in the activities. It wasn't linked to your calendar like it is today. I think this is one of my favorite update notification features. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and click accept. And now you can see that it changed to the accept. As you kind of look at this, it's giving me a rundown of all the details. And at the top right, I can click join to join that meeting. But I want to show you a couple of other ones before I talk more about this meeting that I was invited to. I have a couple of previous meetings, and let me jump back to some of these. Oops, I want to I'll go to this meeting. So this particular meeting, this Mars meeting, you can see that when I come into this meeting, it's showing me the details. This was from June 24th from 6:30 to 7 o'clock, and it has this agenda. This agenda was added either when the meeting was created, you can start an agenda, and I'll show you how that works because that's a new feature. Or we could have actually come into the agenda during the meeting and add notes. So this is a place where we can be doing our follow-ups, adding in tasks. But the key to this agenda area is it's a loop component. So what that means is at the top left of this rectangle, it shows you the loop icon. So this is actually an add-in app. So loops are another application. And this is an interactive tool. Anybody in your domain would be able to go back and add or make changes to this either before the meeting, during the meeting, or after the meeting. So these are things that can be used periodically throughout the meeting of the life of the meeting. So we can use it for the agenda, meeting notes, we can use it for any follow-up tasks that we need to do. It even gives you the ability to open this loop component directly within the Loop app. So, but it's part of the meeting, so I probably wouldn't open it in the Loop app, but just so you're understanding how that works. Also, what I want to point out is when you are selected on a meeting, from this activity category, you also have access to different tabs going across the top. You'll see different tabs depending on the meeting itself and the content and, you know, if you're part of the domain or not. But I can go back to the chat. The chat is where we could chat with the people that are in the meeting, or we could attach files. So it's your typical chat window down at the bottom of the screen. There weren't necessarily any chats during this meeting, but otherwise we would see the history of those chats. There's also a files tab. Of course, that's not a new feature, and it's technically not even enhanced, but we would be able to access any files that were saved during that chat. But the recap is one of my favorite features with meetings, because if you are in part of the domain of who is hosting the meeting, you can come back and get a recap as to what happened during that meeting. We're going to see some integration with Copilot today as well. That gives you some great insight to the meetings. But this is awesome because you can actually access the notes from here. So if I click notes from here, I get the same notes that you saw. I can go into any AI notes. I can see if anybody was mentioned. Also, I could go into the transcript. So if there was a transcript of that meeting, we have access to it. Also, depending on the meeting, if it had a recording to the meeting, you would be able to see that as well. I do have a previous one. Let me get into this. Where did that meeting go? Oh, I probably deleted it because I have a tendency of doing that. But anyway, you can see different information when you are selecting these from this activities. I'm going to go to this one that I have here that's called Speaker Coach Report. In your handout, I'll get to this, what this information means, but we actually have insight to your meeting. I'll show you where you can turn this feature on. So let's say that you're new to doing meetings and you want to see how it's going. You know, you can go out here and practice and do a Teams meeting, practice and see how it went. And this is going to come back and give you feedback about how the meeting went. You know, how was your pace and different things like that. So it's actually giving you suggestions from the meeting. So I'll show you how you can actually use this tool. It is something that isn't turned on by default, but you could if you wanted to. Maybe I should even do that. I kind of would like to, but you can turn it on whenever you want to use it. So I'll show you where that's located. So I really like the interactivities that we get in this new updated activity feed. But one of the big things these days is really meeting notes. So I'm going to actually go to my calendar here in Teams. And I have a meeting that I was invited to for today. And it's actually this project discovery. You can see it's got a video camera right here. I could go into the meeting directly from there, but I'm going to double click to open it. So what I'm going to do is, this is an existing meeting that I was invited to. I didn't even create it. So when I come in to look at the details, one of the things that the person that invited me, they're part of my domain, but they didn't add meeting notes. Starting on page 2 of your handout, it talks about using meeting notes. We can start meeting notes before the meeting even starts. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. It automatically gives me that component, that loop component, giving me the 3 topics by default: agenda, meeting notes, and follow-up tasks. So if I want to put in any agenda for this meeting, like we're going to be discussing, this is a project discovery, new projects, and then we want to talk about old projects. We could be adding that all in before the meeting even starts. So let me show you, if you were going to create your own meeting, how you would do this. So this was an existing meeting that I was invited to. If I go back to calendar again, and by the way, it just saved what I did. If I go to the calendar, and let's say that I actually want to do a meeting this afternoon, I can simply go to the date, go to the time, and click my mouse. Sorry, it opened on my other monitor here. It brings you, of course, into the meeting window where you set it up like you always have done. So I'm going to create one. So credit department meeting is what I'll call this. And I'm going to say that student 1 is required to attend. I've got the date, I've got the time. I could do this as a reoccurrence. I also can connect it to a channel. So I'm actually going to connect this to a channel. I have one called commercial. I have a team called commercial credit, and I'm going to connect it to the general channel. So meetings can be connected to a channel, and I'll show you the benefits of doing that, because I'll run this meeting with you. On the right-hand side, I could send personal invitations, and if you hesitate on the icon, it will give you a screen tip telling you meeting invitations will be added to the personal calendar of all channel members. So what that means is anybody that is a member of that team, of that channel, they will automatically have this on their calendar. So I don't have to individually invite them if I don't want to. I can just simply slide this icon over. So at the top, it now says you have chosen to invite all channel members. So I don't have to invite them individually. Okay, love that feature. And that is actually a newer feature. Down at the very bottom, you will see add an agenda. If I click that add an agenda, once again, I get that template of that loop component. I can come in and put in what our topics will be. Maybe it's going to be based on past due, accounts, new letter to customers, whatever it is that you have so far for an agenda, you can be adding it in. Now I'm going to go ahead and send this. So at the top right, like we normally would do. Oh, wait, by the way, one more thing before I send this. On the right-hand side, you have options that you should be setting up, or at least considering, before you send the meeting. So we can set up some things prior to the meeting, so we don't have to worry about it once the meeting starts. So on the right-hand side, it's got the options pane open. You can see that up at the top, it says who can bypass the lobby. So if I want to say who can go into the meeting without having to wait in a lobby to be let in, I can choose that before the meeting starts. Also, if I click, by the way, I could do record and transcribe right away. Otherwise, when it comes into the meeting options, this is going to open the full dialog box of all of your choices. So we can choose if we're going to have microphones or not. Are we going to do the Q&A option or not? Are we going to have different co-organizers with you? Depending on the meeting, you can have co-organizers, which I'll show you an example of that. But as you can see, we have all these different features we can be turning on. Excuse me. I'm going to say that I want to record and transcribe this automatically. I also could choose if I want to be using Copilot or not. I'm just going to keep it at that, and I'm going to go ahead and click save. So we can be setting up specific features about it prior to the meeting starting. Highly recommend doing that. Now I'm going to go ahead and click send. Some of those I do adjust once the meeting starts, but most of the time I want to set it up before the meeting. Okay. So just so you can see, it's going to, of course, automatically add it to my Teams calendar. It's also synced to my Outlook calendar, which is available, of course, online, desktop version, or even on my mobile device. But here on my mobile device, I'm actually going to join the meeting from another account. So my student one is on my phone. I'm going to have that person start the meeting by clicking join. So I just got a notification. Unfortunately, I'm sorry you couldn't see that on your screen. It was on my other monitor, but it asked me if I wanted to join the meeting that just started. So I clicked join, and I can choose to have my camera turned off, etc. So once you come into a meeting, you really want to pay attention to some of these features, especially the camera. If you know you're going to be using a camera during your Teams meeting, slide the icon over to have it be using your calendar. Make sure that you set up your background. I have been so embarrassed a couple of times. I can't even, was I in an airport? I can't even remember where I was doing the meeting from. And I forgot to check my background. I just came into the meeting and just didn't think about it. My background was horrible. So make sure that you are double checking all these features prior to joining. Once you are ready to join, which by the way, I'm going to turn my mic off for right now. When I'm ready to join, all I have to do is click join. So now I'm going to have my student one leave just because I didn't want the conflict coming through on my phone because that person was on my phone. So you can see that I can get into the meeting. The host can be in the meeting, but what happens automatically is if you had started an agenda prior to the meeting, it's automatically going to show up on the right-hand side. So if you start it beforehand, it's automatically going to be here. Now, of course, we can always close it, and we have an enhanced menu at the top when you're in a meeting. So they've made a few adjustments to this. One of them is we have quick, easy access to the notes. We used to have to go to more and click speaker notes, and it was very cumbersome. It was not easy to use. This is fantastic. Everything is together. When we first started with Teams, it used to give us a wiki. And that was so confusing to everybody because it was like a OneNote notebook, but it wasn't. And it was just confusing. This is super easy. And it's connected to that loop component. So if I click notes again, it's going to reopen that loop component. And if we come in and add in any follow-up tasks, we can assign those directly to who's going to do that task. So I'm going to say this person needs to run a report on customers, and I could click assign to, and I can assign it to whoever we need to do that task, whoever was a member of the meeting. So I'm going to assign it to myself. So I could come in and put in a due date and things like that as well. Okay. So it adds it assigned directly to that specific person. I could add in additional tasks, keep going as I need to. Also, there's the task apps that we can automatically access. So I can go directly into either Planner, or I can go into To Do directly from here. Absolutely love that feature. I use this a lot. This is better than it could have ever been before. I mean, it was okay before, but speaker notes now are fantastic, or I should say meeting notes. I'm going to go ahead and just close that. A couple of other things that I want to mention. I'll show some of this in the next meeting that I open up. But you do have, of course, share capabilities. So if you are the host and you're going to be, of course, sharing your screen, you have your share icon. A little bit more to just sharing your screen, because you could be sharing a whiteboard. You could be sharing what is called content from your camera. So if your camera, because sometimes when you come into a meeting, you're actually going to be in a conference room, and the conference room can have a camera. So we can use this feature down here called content from camera, and we can actually say the camera for this meeting, I want it to focus on our physical whiteboard. I want it to focus on this piece of equipment in the room. I want it to focus on this person, whatever the case would be. So content from camera is going to be whatever camera is being used for the meeting. It can focus on a specific place, whether it's in the room or whatever your case would be. That's pretty cool. But you also, of course, could choose which screen you want to be sharing in your meeting. So you get a lot of different options. At the top right, don't forget that if you're going to be playing a video or anything like that, a recording, make sure you do include the sound. Otherwise, they can't hear the sound. You'll hear it, but the audience doesn't hear it. I made the mistake one time and I was running a video on emails, and it didn't have the sound turned on, and everybody's looking at it like, I could see the audience, and it was kind of awkward for everybody. But anyway, just so you know, I don't have my camera turned on, so some of my features aren't available, but I'm just going to go ahead and click leave. So I automatically am out of that meeting. So kind of back to those meeting notes for a minute on page 2 of your handout. You can start meeting notes right away as you create the meeting. You can do it after you've created the meeting. You can always come back and double click on the meeting. You can go back to your details at the top, go back into your agenda, make whatever changes it is that you need. And you have all these different tabs that you can be using. I won't get into some of these like breakout rooms, but because that's a more advanced feature, we could do one class just on using breakout rooms, but this is something that you would want to set up prior. Usually you set it up prior to the meeting, but it could be set up during the meeting as well. There really aren't any enhancements to that right now, so I won't cover that in this class. But just so you can see, you do have access to adding additional apps to this window when you come in. So if I click on that, I could add any of these apps. So if I wanted to make sure that we had a whiteboard, we had Excel, whatever the case would be, I can choose those so that they would be available for anybody that comes into this. And let me just go ahead and add something here just so you can see. So I'm going to add this Excel file. And I'm going into a SharePoint document library. I'll just add this Excel file. So that can actually be an actual tab up at the top. Somebody clicks on it, they automatically will go into that specific file, because if this was related to the meeting that you were doing, we want people to have access to it right away. So I think that's pretty cool that we could do that. So I'm just going to go ahead and close that for right now. So you definitely want to have some things set up prior to. But what if you're going to be doing the meeting from Outlook? What if you actually do a meeting directly through the Outlook calendar? Let me bring my Outlook calendar over here to show you something. Like, let's say that I want to schedule a meeting for tomorrow. I can start the meeting, creating the meeting, by going to the ribbon and clicking on either Meet Now to start a meeting right at this moment. And by the way, if you do a Meet Now, you don't get all the same features that you get if you're in a regular scheduled meeting. But if I click on the Teams meeting, by the way, I have different accounts that I can be using. I'm going to go to my account, Jolene, and I'm going to say that I want to create a scheduled meeting. I'm just going to do a regular scheduled meeting. When you come into that from Outlook, of course, it's going to be giving you access to everything that you normally would see. But something that a lot of people don't do is down at the bottom, you can come into the meeting options. So when I was talking about doing that for Microsoft Teams, you can also be doing that here through an Outlook meeting. It actually opens a different window to take you into the details. So here it automatically, sorry, I have multiple accounts, so it always wants to know which account I'm using, but it would automatically allow me to go into the meeting details to set it up so that who can bypass the lobby, etc. Now, I won't worry so much about doing that meeting right now, but I just wanted you to be aware of that. And by the way, I still got when I was invited to a meeting, of course, it gave me that meeting here, and I could, of course, open it directly from my meeting request that came in. But that's not new. That's something that we've had for a very long time. So let's get back to Microsoft Teams application and talk more about what it is that we can do that's new inside an actual meeting. So accessing the meeting notes can be done prior to. So when you create the meeting, somebody else creates it, or during the meeting, we can click on the notes to get into the meeting. I have your handout kind of separated now into before a Teams meeting, starting on page 4, during a meeting, and then what can you use that's new after the meeting. So on page 4, before the meeting in a channel is discussed. So I already talked about, I can schedule a meeting to be inside a channel. I did that a minute ago. If I go to Teams and I go to the channel, so I had that, it was in that commercial credit, I go to the general channel. It automatically has posted about that meeting. I can go directly here and click join to join that meeting. Once the meeting starts, it automatically shows a video camera next to that channel. Kind of lets everybody know the meeting has started. So just so you know, that's what it's going to do. But also in the calendar of Teams, when you go to create a new meeting, what kind of meeting do you want? This is something that you seriously need to think about. Am I just inviting a couple of coworkers? Then you would do a normal meeting that I just showed you. But we also have what are called meeting templates that you can use, which include things like webinars, town halls, virtual appointments, and controlled content meetings. At the bottom of page 4, going to page 5, page 6, it's going to give you a description and some advantages that you get. The one that I probably use the most is webinars. Let me give you a demonstration of how that template works. Templates are going to give you things that are predefined. At the top right, instead of just clicking new meeting, click the down arrow. From the down arrow, choose webinar. Webinar is going to open a new window where you can create the webinar. So a webinar is where you're going to be inviting people. You can do some branding to the invitation. You can give them a registration form to fill out. You can have, if you're going to have multiple speakers, you can have their bios be entered in there, and you can choose who the speakers are going to be, and you can choose your co-hosts. So great way to get started with a meeting like the one we're doing here today. So I'm going to put in the name at the top, and I'm going to say that this is going to be about Teams meetings. And it's going to be happening on Monday at 2 o'clock, going to be done at 2:30. I would put in a description of it. Down in the event group, I am the organizer, but if I wanted to add somebody to be a co-organizer with me, I could add them in. I could put in any presenters from your organization. I could click on the icon to add external presenters. And where it says event access, you could choose if it's public or if it's available just for your organization. Do we want to allow sharing to social media? I'm just going to leave the rest of these defaults. You do have meeting options at the top. So if you need to be setting up any of those meeting options that I mentioned earlier, make sure you get those set up. I'm not going to set those up right now. They're the same settings I showed you earlier. I'm going to click save and send invites. It doesn't physically send it yet. What it's going to do is it saved it, and now I can configure the rest of the details for this webinar. On the left-hand side, sorry, it's taking a second to save that. Left-hand side, I can go into, sorry, it has to save it before I can navigate. So now it's all saved. These are all the details. I could still go to the meeting options and stuff, but on the left-hand side, I can go to presenter bios, go to the details page and add in the bio information. I could go to themes or theming, and I could be changing the image that's going to appear at the background. I could be putting in a logo, so if you want your company logo, that kind of a thing. But one of the things that I love is the registration. I'm going to go into configuration. We can create, so by default, there's 1,000 people that can join these webinars. There's different options. If there's town halls, if you need more than that, town halls would be available to a larger number of people. But you can create forms for registration so that you're capturing specific information. So if I go in to add a field, by the way, it automatically does grab their name. But if I go in and I want their address, I can put it in that I want their state, I want their industry, and you can see on the right-hand side, I can make these required. And they've changed this, by the way. This is just updated a couple of weeks ago. We even can move our fields up and down. So if I want the industry to be higher up on the questions, I can do the up arrow to move it up. So we now get the capability of rearranging the fields. We couldn't do that before. I would add fields into the registration form. They wouldn't be in the order I wanted it. I had to start over again. So it's great that we now can rearrange those fields because we're going to need to do that. But anyway, you can also create custom fields. So if I have a custom question that I want to be asking them, have you ever used this application before? Or have you ever been to whatever? You can prompt for specific questions that are choices or check boxes, that kind of a thing. Excuse me, I won't go any further on that right now. Once you have, and I'm going to save the changes, once you have attendees going out and saying, yes, they're going to attend, they register for the event, the attendee status is going to update to let you know who is coming, and it captures all their details, which is pretty fantastic. We also have emails, so we can actually choose the trigger of when the emails are going to go out. So we have a trigger that immediately the registration form goes out. Immediately we get the attendance pending approval, et cetera, meeting reminders. And on the right-hand side, you can preview those emails so you can see what they look like before they go. Also, the reports is after you are doing your meeting, you can come back in and see reports. We also have recording. So once the meeting is done, you can actually go into the recording. But I'm going to jump back up to the details for a second. So when we have all of this done, we have this all created, you need to publish it. So on the top right, you would go over to publish site. Then you would click publish. And then you would have a link to share. So if you're going to be inviting people, whatever, you share the link with them, you put it out on your SharePoint site so they have the link to be able to join. However you're going to do it, you would copy the link for them to be able to join it. They would then be filling out the registration form, et cetera, et cetera. So just so you could see how this piece works. This is the most common template out of all the templates that Teams has available so far. Okay, now I'm not really going to do any more with this, but just so you know, at the top right, you could view the published site. So this is what the site is actually going to look like, just so you could see. It thinks I'm trying to go into a different account, so I won't go in there, but just so you could see, you could view that if you wanted to. Now I'm just going to go ahead and close this. And I have that, of course, on my calendar. I can always get back into it by going to the calendar and make any adjustments that I need to make. Once you create one, you can even copy it. So you can duplicate it and then make, the date changes, whatever else you need to make changes to it instead of starting from scratch. Because if you're going to do a series of different events, that would be an easy way to do it. But the other templates that you have available is Town Hall. And you can see it's got a little bit of a description that's more for a large group of people. So if you're going to have 5,000 people attend, this is what you would want to use. We also have virtual appointments. That is related more for, let's say that I'm a clinic and I'm going to do a virtual appointment with a client. They have a tickle in their throat, they have a cough, whatever, and I want to do a virtual appointment with them. Very private. So this is a choice that you would be able to use. There's a template for that. We also have this controlled content meeting. Highly recommend that one Haley, I'll be right with you. But the controlled content meeting is related to working with somebody that you want them to not be able to do screenshots. You can actually put, you know how we can add confidential across the back of a document and things like that? All of it would be blocked out. People would not be able to take anything from the meeting and reuse it. So it's a very strict way to do a meeting. That's described on page 6 of your handout, just so you know. Haley, did someone have a question I can help with?
Hi, Jolene. Yes, we had a question from Karen in the chat. They wanted to know, maybe it's more of an opinion or a preference, but if you can invite external participants to a Teams meeting, why would you use Zoom over Teams?
Oh, good question. By default, it's part of your 365. So we will have complete connection. And by the way, Zoom, you have to pay for to get the good features. It's not free. If you want the good features, you pay for it. Teams is already part of Microsoft. So it's free to you because you're already paying for the rest of it. It is fully integrated with all of your 365 apps. We already saw that we can use Loop components. You saw that I could add an Excel file to the meeting up at the top. We can have all those other apps be added to it as well. Everything is kept in one central location. I don't have to go to another place to have access to the meeting and the details. It's all right here. Enough said about that, because that's enough for me to use Teams over something else.
Definitely. And if you have external participants, do you see a benefit to using Zoom? Maybe if it's what they prefer, but would you default to Teams perhaps if you had guests joining you?
Always. I use Teams all the time. I absolutely love it because of the integration to the 365 apps. Even if they do not have a license for Microsoft, let's say that they're actually a Google organization, which is fine. They can still, of course, attend a Teams meeting, just like you don't have to have a license for Zoom to attend a Zoom meeting. Same thing. But they will, because they're external, they won't have access to the great features like recap. So just so you lose a little bit by not having a Teams account, but the benefits outweigh anything by
Okay,
being connected to your Microsoft account.
awesome. Thank you. Karen, if that answered your question, I hope that was helpful. If you have anything else, just let us know. Thanks, Jolene.
You're welcome. So setting up your meeting is at the bottom of page 6, but let's talk about during the meeting. So what's going to happen during the meeting? Of course, I already mentioned that you're going to want to change your background. We do have an enhanced menu going across the top. So the presenter tools have been improved, and that's actually in your handout on page 8 where it's talking about those. Sharing content, I already showed you how that feature works, and that includes, turning on your sound, making sure that your sound is turned on if you want them to see, be able to hear your computer sound, so that if you go to run a video or whatever, they can hear it. They have simplified, and let me actually open a meeting. I'm going to actually join this credit department meeting, which once again, that was a channel, a meeting for created in the channel. So right away, I would make sure my camera is turned on and I would check my background and things. I could come over to my headset or my computer speaker, whatever, and check all that, but I'm just going to join it. So when you come into the meeting, like I did a few minutes ago, just so you know, there is a microphone. You can't see it on my screen, but my other monitor, my main monitor, when you're in a Teams meeting, not other programs, the microphone at the bottom of your system tray, the bottom right of your taskbar, you can unmute and mute yourself directly from that microphone. That's pretty cool. But we also have, I'm going to go to the microphone up at the top and click on the down arrow. They have simplified the controls for the microphone. It is so much easier to use now. It was like complicated as like, what is all this? So they're really starting to go back and remove things that we don't need, kind of take them off the main menu and making things easier for people to use. So that's been enhanced. Also, when it comes to working with a lot of people in your meeting, which I don't really have a lot of people. And by the way, it told me the recording has started and it's doing a transcription down at the bottom. Just so you're noticing that that happened, because when I set up the meeting, I said to automatically record and transcribe, just so you know that it's doing that. But I'm going to close this little window that popped up that's telling me that I'm recording. You're supposed to always let people know that you're recording. So that's kind of why that pops up, to remind you, let everybody know it's being recorded. But anyway, at the bottom of page 9 of your handout, I can't demonstrate this because I don't have a bunch of people in the meeting with me today, but there is a new focus on your audience view that you can be using that allows you to have what you're displaying on your screen, but then you can actually see each person's video camera along the bottom. I've been using that and it is super cool. I think that is one of my favorite views. I mean, you still have the views, and let me show you what I mean. If I go to the view tab, the view icon up on the menu at the top, but you can go into gallery view, you have a speaker view, toggle mode. If I were doing a large group of people, which I'm not, we could have that gallery where it looks like you're in a theater and everybody has their own seats, and you can even assign seats where people are going to go. I think that's pretty cool. So lots of different views, and they've made some definite enhancements to it. I like the together mode, but I can't use it because I don't have a lot of people. But just so you know that that is enhanced, and I gave you a screenshot in your book. Also that content camera, I mentioned that. So if I go to my camera, I can adjust which camera I'm using. This is also where you can go and you can choose your different backgrounds and things, adjust your brightness. You also have a soft focus. You can go into more videos, so you have access to all of that. On your share, just like I mentioned before, you can be sharing whatever it is that you want. That's also where you're going to find that content from camera. That's described on page 10 of your handout. We also have the ability to now save annotations when you are using a whiteboard. So if you come into a meeting and you're utilizing the tool called a whiteboard, you can, and you're doing markups on it, you have the ability of being able to go back and save your annotations to that whiteboard. So if people were coming out there and making markings and, circling things and whatever, those can now be saved with that whiteboard. So that's actually pretty cool. But when you come to the drop down for more, you can get back into your meeting information or into the settings. So the settings will allow you to go into the meeting options. So if you didn't set up your meeting options prior to the meeting starting, make sure that before people join, you make sure that these are set up the way you want them to be set up. But if you go to the apps is where you can be adding in other applications to utilize during the meeting. So depending on what exactly you want to use, there's tons of different apps that are available. So I'm kind of just going through some things to get to what happens after the meeting. But what if you came into the meeting a little bit late? As a matter of fact, I'm going to have my other person from my phone join this credit department meeting. And remember, this is going on in the channel. As a matter of fact, let me show you that it's going on in the channel. So I can see this is going on right here. I can see the video camera for the channel. So this meeting is happening right now and I can see information about it going on. And I got the video camera over here, just so you can see that. But let me jump back to the actual meeting. So I have my person joining the meeting. So of course we'll see when they come in. I'm doing join now. Sorry, I got to turn my sound off on my phone. So when it comes to other people being in the meeting with you, depending on if they're part of your organization, of course, you're going to have access to all their information. But if they came in and we started the meeting already, they can actually go to Copilot and they can say, what did I miss? I didn't turn Copilot being available for this meeting. I forgot to do that. So unfortunately, my Copilot is not available for me right now on here. But what it would actually do is they could go in and say, give me a recap on what happened in the last 5 minutes of the meeting. So we have the ability to be able to go back once we join the meeting, use Copilot during the meeting to be able to do recaps. So if I miss something or I need to ask Copilot, who was the person that made this comment during the meeting? Copilot can be our assistant to help us with that. It can even tell us if there were any follow-up things that need to take place or anything like that. Now, of course, I can be going to notes to be putting in those tasks so that we can be assigning things to whoever needs to do those follow-ups. So if I come in and I add a task, we want to hope to see that next time. I'm just putting that in as my task, and I'm going to say that this is being assigned to Jolynn, and I'm going to put in a due date, and it automatically will add that task to this. So it's all part of this meeting. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to end the meeting for everybody. If I'm the host of the meeting, I don't just leave because everybody else can stay on the meeting. We need to click end and say end meeting. It's going to end the meeting for everybody that is on it. So my phone just disconnected, etc. And we have access to that meeting right here in this channel because this was connected to this channel. So if I'm part of this commercial credit team, and I didn't make that meeting, I can come back here to the post tab of this channel, double click on the meeting from the post, and it will automatically take me into the details of that meeting. So after the meeting, which is in your handout on page 10, what are some enhanced or new features that we have? We have so many different tabs going on at the top, but this is just the details tab. If I go to the scheduling assistant, that of course is where you would be scheduling the meeting to make sure everybody's available. The attendance is automatically going to be taken. The computer does that. The manual person doesn't have to write down who attended. It is automatically being done here. We get a dashboard at the top, which is fantastic. We can also see if we had a whiteboard that was being used, it would automatically bring up a whiteboard, which by the way, you can create a whiteboard prior to the meeting even starting, just so you know. Breakout rooms, Q&A, here's that Excel file that we could have used during that meeting as well. I'm going to jump back to the chat. Here in the chat, you can actually see that it automatically said, this is when it started, there was a recording, this is when it ended, and here's the actual recording as well. So if I want to go into the recording, I could do so from here. But I can also access this by going directly to the calendar like you always do. So I don't have to do it just in a channel, but it's nice to have everything in one central location of the channel. So if it's related to a channel you have, definitely do it there. Otherwise, I could come back here and double click and open the meeting back up as well. So just so you can see, there are going to be multiple ways that you can do things, depending on, of course, what it is. But I'm going to jump back to the chat because there's a new feature when it comes to the recordings. Recordings are going to be viewed through Microsoft Stream. So I just clicked on the recording icon and it took me to the recording itself. Down at the bottom, I could access different speakers. I could see topics. It can organize things based on chapters. But if I want to, and by the way, I have AI notes, I have mentioned. I also would have access to the transcript. For some reason, my transcript didn't come across, but that's okay. I'm going to go up to open and stream, because one of the new features is in Microsoft Stream, if you had a delay as to when you actually started the meeting, you might have some dead air time. You don't have to keep that all as being part of the video. It now has the ability of being able to trim. It didn't do that before, but now it has this trim over on the right-hand side. Also notice that it has Copilot built in. For some reason, my Copilot wasn't turned on during the meeting. I apologize for forgetting to do that. But what it's going to do is allow you to catch up on the meeting by going into a recap of the meeting. We'd be able to go back and review. It would actually give you a recap of the meeting, or we could go back into Copilot and be asking it information that, okay, did this happen in the meeting? Who's the person that said this? I use that a lot to say, Now, who was the person that mentioned this? Because however they registered for the meeting, it's going to come up with their name. So unfortunately, I forgot to turn that on, so you're not seeing it, but just so you know that it does do that. And I gave you information in your handout on how that works. So they have really given us some additional tools that we can be using when it comes to after the meeting has happened. And the information about that speaker coach that I had talked about earlier, I forgot to show you where you turn that on in the meeting. But if you look at page 12 of your handout, I won't start another meeting, but you can go into the more options, go to the language and speech, and turn speaker coach on. When you turn that speaker coach on, just so you know how it's going to look, I'll just access this by going back to my activity. If we had used that speaker coach, I would be getting the results from it like you're seeing on my screen right now. So this is a great way to find out how are you doing during the meeting. It's only available for you, and you're the only person that's going to see the results of that speaker coach. Using Copilot in your meetings, that information starts on page 12. So if you join late, you can catch up on what you missed since you joined. And basically, you can just say, catch me up on what I missed, because it knows when you joined because it's got the attendance. Also, it helps you to be able to go back and recap. Did we discuss this topic? Who is the person that said this? Do we have any follow-up discussions we need to do? It can recap that entire meeting for you so that you don't have to go back and try and listen to the recording and try and pick up on things. Copilot can help you with all of that. So it can actually do a wrap up of your meeting and give you steps on what needs to be done next. So a lot of things need to happen before you start the meeting. Set up the options, choose the correct type of meeting, use the templates. I use webinar a lot. I love the webinar feature. What you want to do is test that with your coworkers. Do a little get together, bring your laptops into a conference room, do some testing on it before you go live with a bunch of people, just to make sure you understand exactly how that's working for you. I highly recommend testing everything prior to going live. So a lot of times I come out and I'll practice my presentation and then delete it when I'm done. I don't have to keep it. But Copilot, I can't say enough about it. It gives you a lot of extra features. But also in your handout, I do not have this license, but there is a Teams Premium. It is an extra cost, but the premium would allow you to have enhanced features like customizations. So when you go to create a meeting, you can have a lot of customizations with branding the Teams meetings and everything. All of that would be available. Also, it has scheduling staff durations for on-demand virtual meetings. So if somebody's going to be, scheduling that clinic time with you, we can say, here's the staff that's available during that time. So it's got other features too, but just to kind of highlight a couple of those. Haley, did somebody have a question that I can help with?
No, we didn't have any questions yet, but if
Okay,
anyone does have any last minute ones, feel free to pop them into the chat, or you can hop on
great.
your mic and join us in the conversation. But thank you, Jolyn. Was that everything you had to
Absolutely.
cover today?
Yes, I could go on forever and ever, but that's where we'll stop today. I
I'm
love
so
Teams
impressed.
meetings. It is so
Yeah,
cool.
I just added the meet option as an
Oh,
add-on and pinned it, so I'm really excited to
yes.
get to use that. But
That dashboard look has saved me so much time. Just
yeah,
customizing that navigation pane in Teams is
mhm.
fantastic.
I like the
Yeah, love
overview
that.
of past as well, like past meetings. You
Yes.
can see what you just attended in the past week and remind
And
yourself. It's so great.
and it has that recap.
Hmm.
So you can always be getting back into that recap.
Brilliant. Awesome.
But
Love it.
great features.
Great features. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us. If you would like a copy of the recording today, or if you have any further training questions, please reach out to us at training@smartdolphins.com, and any general inquiries, info@smartdolphins.com. Quick reminder, we have another training event on July the 25th, and that's going to be focused on Copilot. That was mentioned today, but Copilot
Yes.
in Excel and Outlook. So please feel free to register for that on our website and stay tuned for some more upcoming amazing events this August. Thank you, Jolyn, for
Good.
being here today. Thank you for joining us and have a lovely afternoon.
Thank you, Haley. Bye, Bernard.